Yerushalmi Chagigah Daf Ches, I'm off the very top. Hilchos Shabbos. Rabbi Yoina Reb Chama Bar Ukva Makshi asked. We said in the Mishnah that Hilchos Shabbos are like Sunan Karorim Atluim B'Saira. So Makshi V'Lo Ein Kosav Ela Ach Mayin U'Bo Mikveh Maim Yeh Tohar V'Lo Mimenu Kam Halachas. We have by Tahar we have the same thing. You have one pasuk and there's all kinds of halachas learned from that. So why don't we say the same thing that it's Karam Atluim B'Saira by Tahar too? No answer is given. Okay, Reb Zira B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan in Bas Halachas Yedecha Ve'en Atidei Mativa. If you see halacha, if you don't know exactly what it means, where does it come from, don't just dismiss it. You have many halachas that are that come from it's a Kabbalah, halacha Moshe Sinai, and they're in the Mishnah. No reason is given, and maybe that this might be one of those halachas that turns out to be halacha Moshe Sinai. Amar Rav Miyayos harei shnei minechit emilula shabo nochem perishalanu yoynayinu. Would we know? And the Gra adds over here shehi halacha Moshe Messina. In this case of shnei minechit, you have two kinds of wheat that you plant. You plant them in two patches, so so if you plant them in two patches, then then you have to give two pay. So you plant them together in one patch, then you only give one pay. Okay, that's halacha Moshe Messina. Reb Zeir Reb Shem Reb Laza Echtov Loi Rube Toirasi. It's a pasuk. So Rube, we're going to use the word Rube as riv, as fights. In other words, this is V'chi Rube Shal Torah Nichtav, and we'll see that in a minute. V'chi Rube Shal Torah Nichtav is Mochta Torah written, right? Obviously, most Torah is not written. El Merubin, what does this mean? El Merubin Advarim Adroshim and Aksav and Advarim Adroshim Al Peh. There's much more that we dashed from Torah Shabbat than there is in Torah Shabbat Peh. Is that really the case? You have much more Torah Shabbat Peh. Go to any farm store. That it's more beloved are the Torah Shabbat than Torah Shabbat Peh. Amru Bapasi, Echtev Loi Rube Toirasi. What is that referring to? Like we said before, Ela Techachas. That's the Toichacha that's written in the Torah. Afilu Kain Loi Kamar Zar Nechshavu. Even though I gave you all kinds of warnings, make sure you learn. Still, Kamar Zar Nechshavu. You didn't. The Torah is strange to you. Amr Abavan Ilu Kasafti Lacha Rube Toirasi. Loi Kimo Zar Nechshavu. Rambam says a different shot. He says if Torah B'Ksav had been written down, so then what would make us different? The Loi Kimo Zar Nechshavu, we would be like a zar. In other words, a zar like a stranger. In other words, like any other nation. As in what? Ma beinan lumis elamatzin sefrein ve'elamatzin sefrein elamatzin dafterein ve'elamatzin dafterein. We're differentiating between us and the goyim. They pull out their Bible. They have their so-called New Testament. And then we have our Torah. So what will be the difference? So therefore, there's Torah Shabbat Peh, and that differentiates us from the Goyim. Reb Chagigah b'Shem Reb Shmuel Banach nemru dvarim b'peh v'nem dvarim b'ksav. Vein on a yodim elu mehen chaviv, and which we don't know which one's more beloved. Element matik siv. It says, and he obviously argues what we said earlier. Ki al pi advarim elu karati it chabris ves Yisrael, and we dash the words al pi like al peh. Hadomra Eisim Shebapeh Chaviv and Torah Shebapeh is what's more chaviv. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yud Reb Shimon Chadam Im Shimarta Mashebapeh Shimarta Mashebeksav Ani Koset Chabris. He dash in the pasuk differently. It says if you keep everything, fine, I'm Koset Bris with you. Vim Lav, you decide like the reformers, the conservatives, that there's no Torah Shebapeh, Ani Koset Chabris. Then I'm not. Then there's no bris for you. The Quran Amad says Shimarta Mashebapeh Shimarta Mashebeksav. You keep everything. At Mekalos Chai gets Chavim Lav, but if you don't keep everything, Ein At Mekalos Chai, you don't get any schar. So this is darshan in the pasuk. It says it says in Devarim. It says Vayitna Hashem Elai Shnei Luchos Ha'avonim Ksuv Be'etzba Elokim Ve'aleihem Kichol Hadvarim. So darshan could have said Aleihem Kol and Dvarim. Instead it says Ve'aleihem Kichol and Hadvarim. So we darshan that. That is, and this we just had this Megillah, Mikro Mishnah Talmud Halachos V'Agadas. So there's actually only three Rebuyim, and the and The Carbonator says, I mean, you have five items here. So the Carbonator says that the pshat is that mikra is pashut. So that you don't need a riboy for. That's pashut pshat. So it's mikra. It takes care of mikra. Then you have Mishnah. Talmud and halachas go together because that way you derive the halach from the Talmud. Then you have Agadas. Okay. Afilu masha Talmud. So the Gemara continues. Afilu masha Talmud vasik asad lahiris of fnei Rabbi. Any chiddush you'll come up with? Kvanem l'Moshe Messina. It was already said. Moshe Messina. Matam, where do we see this from? Yesh davar shiyam reizeh chadashu. Right, look, this is new. And Chaverim Meshiva, and he says, Vayim and that's the end of the pasuk. V'ahoy loy lamim, ashayim ulfanenu. It was already here from before. So you see over here that any chiddush that you can possibly come up with was already said earlier. Rav Zira b'shem Shmuel. Ein moedin loymin halachas loymin hagadas loymin hatosef. The element of the topic. You cannot paskin. Let's compare and contrast different halachas. Over here we're talking about halachas l'Moshe Sinai, below min hagadas. You can't compare different agadas, different midrashim, and toseftis. Ella min. I'm sorry, you can't paskin. I'm saying here because you can't paskin if you have two. So you don't paskin halachas. Now, you have two. If you have two similar things, but one is a halach l'Moshe Sinai, you can't say, well, it's similar to this. And I know this is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Maybe this is halacha. V'loy min agadas. You don't paskin from agadas. V'loy min toseftis. Ella min Talmud. You don't paskin from Gemara. The same case we had earlier. So we see we're learning Sarim from Chitin. The Chitin we said on Amud Aleph is Halacha Moshe Messina. So how can you learn from that? So obviously, you see, you could compare to Halacha Moshe Messina. Amud Aleph no Kachais Halacha Biyadim Shechachua. That it was actually Halacha Moshe Messina. They forgot about, and they remembered it. But they're not comparing Sarim to Chitin. Tomorrow from another sugi. Vatanina machlik bitzalim lachim lashuk umekayim ovation lagorinus. Remember shuk v'gorin kachos alach lamosh kachos alach biyad mishukachua. Right, in the case over there that that if you have bitzalim lachim and evasions, you have onions that are fresh, and then you have ones that you're going to preserve. So you give off. It's a din of two granos, and that because we're comparing it to chitin. So if that's the case, you see over here that you do compare one halacha to another, even if that halacha you're comparing it to is halacha Moshe Sinai. And you're going to tell me over there, oh, that's also a case where they forgot that it was halacha Moshe Sinai, and now they remembered. Obviously, that's too coincidental, and therefore it's a kasha and Rav Zira. You cannot automatically learn from a psak. You have to have all the details of a psak in order to say, well, I have a similar shiloh, let me pass like that, psak halacha. You can't learn from a story. So if a story happened, you have to have every detail. It could be missing details, and therefore you can't learn from the story. Amalei Reb Mona Hadodatma Behut Loy Sava. We're talking about over here as a regular person. Somebody's not a Talmud Chacham. Bram Behut Sava, but someone's a Talmud Chacham. Of it, he could compare because he'll understand all the reasons. He can get into the sugi. Amalei. So he said to him, no. So he said to him, no. So Chanani said to him, no. Bein de Sava, Bein de Loy Sava, Behut de Pali. It doesn't matter whether or not you're Talmud Chacham. If there's a machlekes, you can't learn from it. Brown Behuda loy poly, there's no machlekes, bein sava, bein loy sava of it. Then you don't even have to be Talmud Chacham. You can either way, you can learn from this ma'isa, as long as there's no machlekes. Rabbi Avo b'shem Rabbi Yochanan kol asurin sheriba alein shoygig muta mezidasa. So there's a concept of being batal b'rayv. So let's say you went accidentally, and you were mavatal derived. In other words, you dropped, let's say, a truma into chulin, let's say, and there wasn't enough chulin there to mevatel the truma, and accidentally you dropped some more chulin in this, and now it's batal. Can you do that? So shoygig it's moter. However, if you did it on purpose in order to be dropped in some more chulin in order to mevatel the truma, then it's asa. We can understand what's the chiddush. It's a mishnah. Im shoygig moter meis it asa. Right? In the case I just mentioned with the truma. So what I need that for that? I was going, masnita betruma. Let's take out the next word. We're talking about truma. Truma, and according to Rechaim, it's truma bismanazeh, which is rabbanon. So you think, okay, Maybe over there, Shoigig Mutter Mezid Asa. Also, Memlucha Vafilu B'Shakol Dvarim, anything, even a Deiraisa, the same would apply. Shoigig Mutter and Mezid would be Asa. Rabbi Achim Shem Rabbi Yonason, in other words, I'll just go back for a second, he would think maybe by Deiraisa, even a Shoigig would be Asa. Reb Achab Shem Rabbi Yonason, Kshem Shemitzah Loim Al Davar Shu Nasa, Kach Mitzvah Shloi Loim Al Davar She'eina Nasa. Right? This is obviously context matters, and the same way it's a mitzvah to say something, to give mussar. In the case we know people listen to you, it's also a mitzvah to keep your mouth shut if you know they're not going to listen to you anyway. Amr Ablez, Kishem Shasa L'Taris Atame. Same way, it's also to be matar the tameh. Kach also l'tameh satar. Right, so let's say if a suffix, right? I can't, if I know something's vade tamid, right? And say, if I know something's vade tamid, allowed to say it's tar, the same way, the same thing in reverse. And if I'm not sure about something, and it might be tar, but I want to be machmer, and I want to be metamid. No, you can't do that either. And then don't be lazy, get out and research it, and then come up with a psak that's a vade. Also, you could be causing a loss. All right, you come in with a guy's shechted a cow, and if you're doing chula now, right, you have all kinds of sfeikis now. If you're doing the bavli, the daf, you're doing that, the daf yom and the bavli, all kinds of sfeikis. You decide you're going to be machme, you'll be machme, you'll tar for this. We find that the Gemara says, you're going to bankrupt people like this. You might. So therefore, do the research. Rabbi Abba Yaakov Shem Rabbi Yochanan and Bos Halacha Tachas Yidei Chavein Yidei Litlois Im Lisroif. Let's say you have a suffix truma, you don't know if it's tamei or not. So you don't know litlois is a toilet, it's al suffix, or lisroif, maybe it's a vade. Loilam have a rotzach asreifa. The answer is you should run and burn it. Why? Yoisim and atliya, even more than a suffix. Why? Shenlecha chaviv b'toyra mi parim nisrafim nesin nisrafim, because they're done b'fnim. Vehem b'sreifa. Wow. And they're done b'sreifas. You see, streifas chaviv. Rabbi Yossi boy, this is what are you talking about? You learn something that the proper way of doing the mitzvah is a parmin rough, and the way you're supposed to do is burn it and bring it lifnai, right? You're supposed to bring it lifnim. Um, over here we have a suffix who says who? Why is streifa chaviv in the case of a suffix? He doesn't agree with this. Hanulach perika kol chayovim, Hanulach perika kol chayovim, Hanulach perika kol chayovim. Mazel tov.